I remember one day, it was real rainy and gross outside. I had gotten one of the emails from Lisa, and she was kind of describing her morning, and she was feeling pretty down and lonely. And I just started thinking about that and started thinking about all the other stories that I had heard, many of them very sad. And I found myself, my mood just completely plummeting. It was matching the weather. I was in this really deep funk. I ended up having to walk 14 of the 16 miles that day. It took me about 5 hours. And I remember crying throughout most of it. I'm Colleen Caul, and in the summer of 2011, I ran from St. Louis to New York City to spread awareness and raise money for cystic fibrosis. Last Wednesday, June 6th, Katie turned 18 years old. I was 12 when she was born, so there's 12 years age difference between Katie and me, which is a really special relationship. I am extremely close with all of my siblings. I have an older sister, Kelly, a brother who's 3 years younger, Glennon, and the four of us are as tight as any siblings could be.
When she told us that she was going to quit her job and run for 65 days from St. Louis to New York City, I knew it was crazy. I knew it was, but I knew again that Colleen and Kelly and Glenn would do anything for Katie.
My reaction was very sudden and very clear, and I thought it was totally insane. And I told Colleen that it was an insane project, but if that's what she wanted to do, I also knew that she would find some way to make it work.
That's the fantastic thing about Colleen is she is crazy, but she's a crazy person that does things. She doesn't just talk, she does them. So after she got done explaining everything and I kind of got the whole, this is actually what she wants to do settled into my brain, it was like, okay, what do we do? And we started planning stuff out that night.
The one thing I realized that I could do to help Katie and to help CF was doing the endurance running and fundraising for cystic fibrosis.
My memory of when Katie was diagnosed with CF will always be implanted in my mind.
When Katie was a baby, she just wasn't growing and gaining weight the way little babies should.
Her birth was normal, very healthy. She only wasn't gaining weight, so we were taking her back to the doctor constantly for weight checks, but she was never sick. All the blood tests were fine. So our pediatrician recommended that we see a GI, a gastroenterologist, to check her out and just see what was going on. Actually, one of the first tests was a sweat test, the test that is typically done to diagnose, to screen for cystic fibrosis, which came back negative for Katie.
So for about a year, the doctors had different diagnoses and different thoughts. At one point, they thought she had celiac, so they put her on a complete gluten-free diet. and that ended up not being the case, and so she lost even more weight because she wasn't able to eat as much.
We went to Cardinal Glennon Hospital, and we were with the GI doctor there and an evaluation, and everything was going well. And in fact, Jeff had to leave to see a patient. Jeff's a psychologist, and I'll never forget because Katie was playing in the waiting room, and I was sitting there, and the GI doctor came in and said, "Katie has cystic fibrosis," and they had done a third sweat test, and this one came back positive.
I can remember sitting around the kitchen table with my mom and dad and Kelly, Glenn, and my little sister Katie. And I think Katie was probably around 2 or 2.5 at the time. And my mom and dad told us that Katie had cystic fibrosis. And even the name sounds scary and overwhelming.
We came home and our 4 kids were here in this kitchen. And I sat down on the chair and we were telling the kids, and Katie crawled up on my lap and she said, "Mommy, it's okay, it's just my tummy."
Even when she was 2, she was the strong one in our family, keeping everybody calm and reassured.
CF has definitely been a big part of my life, but it has not been my whole life. Everyone has something to deal with, and CF is my challenge. My family has definitely impacted my way of looking at CF. My siblings and my parents have done so many amazing things and just given me that drive and determination to not let CF hold me back. I'm not going to let CF stop me from achieving all my goals.
She's never once complained about it, which is astonishing to me.
Word started getting out that I was running marathons and had cystic fibrosis, which is really uncommon. For me to be alive at 31 years old at the time and to be able to do this without the ability to digest food and have this mucus in my lungs. So I realized that I had something to give back.
The information and the advice and all of the wisdom that I got was invaluable. With running 15.5 miles each day, they taught me the importance of, you have to save enough gas so for day 55, you're still able to run and get those miles in.
The exercise, to me, it is therapy. I run because I get this stuff up out of my lungs.
It's an idea of planting seeds. You stick ideas out there, you talk, you advise, you give good example and model to other kids and people. And when you see some of the seeds that you've planted in their lives blossom and bear fruit, it's rewarding. It's real satisfying. Makes you feel like you've accomplished something. My real goal wasn't just for the development of any pulmonary functions. I guess what was more important to me was the goal of getting her to develop some self-discipline, some courage, the ability to see a goal out there in front of you and do whatever it takes to get there. I figured if she could learn how to do those things, she could learn how to get through a bad day or a bad time or some bad news of cystic fibrosis, if and when those days and times and news came.
It seemed like kind of a natural thing to want to make this huge impact, raise a lot of money, raise a lot of awareness, not just in St. Louis or a different city, but across the country.
One of the things that we have an issue with the CF Foundation is, there are only 30,000 people nationwide that have this disease, so we are considered an orphan disease, and we don't pay for advertising. We're very frugal with the money that we do have, which is a wonderful thing, but we don't get a ton of exposure.
The build-up to the Run for Roses involved a tremendous amount of work, and And Linda is a very natural fundraiser.
The only reason Run for Roses was as successful and as a huge a national endeavor as what it became was because of the people that helped me. My family rallied around me.
Well, one of the things that we knew right off the bat for 65 days that was going to be a huge expense if not donated was hotel, lodging, and food, as well as transportation. It was amazing the response we got, just amazing how many hotels and motels were willing to donate a night or two to this project.
My role with Run for Roses was doing all the accounting and the money management. We were able to raise just over $40,000, I believe. So it was very, very good. We were all very, very happy with the amount that we were able to raise and support.
I helped Colleen as the think tank chief just to kind of organize ideas and kind of get the ball rolling on kind of how to structure and get her dream kind of organized and in place.
We always joke around that it's crazy and it's a sickness that our family doesn't know the word no.
Our mom and dad really raised us to cherish and respect one another. Some of my kind of fondest memories growing up are, Friday nights were game nights, and we would order pizza or Chinese, and just lots of time together. And, I think just the way that they raised us, again, to cherish each other and enjoy time with each other and have fun with each other has continued. And, right now the relationships that we have with each other are the best relationships that I have, in my life, that we just really rely on each other, and, the three of them are my best friends.
We had the kickoff downtown at Keener Plaza. And then Katie and I, two of my really good friends from high school, and a few friends I met later in life, and a bunch of Katie's friends all ran with me the first 3 miles. Even though it was excruciatingly hot, having them there for the first leg really got me through the rest of those 15 and a half miles feeling really good.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to convince Katie to stay the whole 65 days. Sorry, I'm a senior. I gotta get back to school. Make those freshmen bow down. Sorry, thank you though. Oh, yeah, too hot, but thank you though. All right, we'll see you guys.
Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder, and it's inherited, so it's nothing that anybody did wrong. And it's an illness that comes from both sides of the family. So the child inherits a gene from the mother and from the father. And so it's one of those guiltless disorders, as we say, because when parents come to us and they hear the diagnosis, immediately they think, how did this happen? How did this happen? Whose fault is it? And it's nobody's fault. It's an illness that occurs.
And it's characterized by every cell in the body, but most strikingly what we call the exocrine system. What eventually happens is that this leads to a dehydration of the airways. And that would go on to produce two main involvements in the lungs and in the GI tract. It was 1989 when the gene was discovered, and that was an absolute major breakthrough. When we first started, we really didn't have much. We didn't have good antibiotics. We didn't have pulmozyme. We didn't have some of the techniques we have in airway clearance. So we really didn't have much at that point. We just went day by day, and certainly over the years, the CF Foundation, the National CF Foundation, had done a tremendous job in recruiting top-notch researchers and leading them into the right studies and projects and actually producing good stuff.
The Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is the world's leader in a search for a cure for cystic fibrosis. We fund more CF research than any other organization in the world, and nearly every CF drug available on the market today was made possible by the support of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. In February of 2012, the FDA approved the first drug that treats the underlying cause of cystic fibrosis instead of just the symptoms, which was fantastic.
But it's only for one specific mutation. It's not for the most common mutation, which is the delta F508. It's for one that has lesser numbers of patients, but it absolutely cures the disease.
Only a limited number of patients are eligible for that particular drug, Kalydeco, but the excitement that it generated for all of those individuals and families and caregivers with cystic fibrosis has been really unbelievable, because I think it gives new hope on the horizon, that people are still working to find a cure, that we're increasing awareness, we're promoting fundraising to help with these cures and with these new initiatives and treatments that are available.
So this drug is opening up so many doors, and already has opened so many doors to drugs that will help, everyone with CF. And it really makes this the time for people to get involved. We're getting closer and closer. It's a huge light at the end of the tunnel. So we need as many people as we can to come help us. Help us in this fight. Help us get to the end sooner, so that everyone with CF has a chance.
But it's truly amazing to see the progress, even in my short 13-year career with caring for children with cystic fibrosis.
When I started working here, there had been about 5 children that had recently been born. So it's so neat to me that I can, grow up with them, and, they're in school now. And it's so neat to see that. It makes me feel old, but it's so neat to be there and watch them grow and watch them not have to go into the hospital as much. You find out once you get into this world of CF how small it is and how everybody does end up knowing each other, but the awareness just on a national level, on a big scale, isn't there. And that was one great thing about Run for Roses, is that gave us, this newfound awareness. The stories on the news were about this crazy girl that was running from St. Louis to New York, but there was a message behind it.
This area is so cute.
There were a lot of really memorable days throughout the 65-day journey. And the most special of the days were the ones where complete strangers who had somehow heard about Run for Roses through all of the media and my blog and our website, where they called me up and asked if they could join.
All right, thanks. Good day. Be safe getting back to your car. All righty. Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.
Colleen having people run with her, I know was a lot of It was a lot of fun for her, and she got to talk to people as she ran, and of course I'm sure it made time go a little faster too.
So what's going on?
It's 3:03 in the morning, and I was in a really good sleep, and all of a sudden I hear this beeping noise, this dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee. And apparently our carbon monoxide security alarm went off. So now we are sitting in the parking lot of Patron's, and the sick part of me said, Tom, go get the camera, we need to record this. So this is Jody and Bill Squires. And Bill Squires is my dream weaver, is what I call him, the fairy godfather of my story. We're in the MetLife Stadium where I just did the lap around, and I just wanted to ask Jody and Bill to talk a little bit about being the parents of Sean, who has cystic fibrosis.
Well, it's just, you know, it's a battle every day, and he's 14 years old, and although you look at him and you think he's perfectly normal, as you know, they're not.
Sean, a few years ago, we made a bet that when he got to 90 pounds, I would give him $200, and he made it. But then he instantly got sick, and he was hospitalized for 22 days and lost 22 pounds. He made me pay the $200, and there was no contingency plan that he had to keep it on. But it's taken him a long time to put that weight back on, and he actually made the wager with me. He says, Dad, back in May, he said, give me $100 if I get the weight on, make 100 by the end of June. So to really motivate him, I said, okay, I'll give you the 100, but if you don't make it, you have to give me 50.
The greatest thing when he was like 98.6, and he was, just getting there, and when it finally hit 100, it was like, get the camera, it was so exciting, so.
Absolutely. When I started coming up with the Run for Roses idea, I really wanted to run it in 65 days. 65 is a really special number for cystic fibrosis.
The CF Foundation was started in 1955, and kids with CF rarely lived to reach kindergarten age. When my boys were diagnosed, Richard was the first to be diagnosed in 1964, and then Arthur, the older one, who was 6 at the time. What I didn't realize that I was already pregnant with Anthony, and against all odds, he had it also. The life expectancy was, at the time, between 13 and 15 years old. And the doctor who diagnosed Richard first, Richard was 4, and the doctor said, take him home, play with him, enjoy him. He won't live to be older than 8 or 9. Many years ago, when I first started CF, I would not miss an opportunity to speak with people about CF, because nobody knew what I was talking about. Everybody would say cystic what, because CF was unknown in the 60s. And Richard was a little boy, but he didn't know that he had CF. He was a toddler, he'd do his therapy, I'd do the aerosol therapy, the respiratory therapy, all of that every day. But we never discussed cystic fibrosis. So he comes toddling into my room one day, and he says, Mommy, I know what you're working for. And I was shocked because Richard didn't know he had cystic fibrosis. He was 4 years old. I said, sweetheart, what am I working for? He said, you're working for 65 Roses.
Then that's been the national trademark for the CF Foundation, 65 Roses. And little kids who have cystic fibrosis, they call it 65 Roses. And it's this beautiful image that they have placed upon a pretty ugly disease.
I could not imagine living my life without fighting this disease every day. I had to be true not only to myself, but to the children and to the whole world of CF. Because how could I live with myself if I didn't do everything possible to find a cure for this disease? And what I find so exciting is that now I know that there are 65 Roses events not only around the country, but around the world. And what's even more exciting is that Richard was 51 in August. God bless him, he was 51 in August. And that's our story.
Day 65 had finally arrived. I woke up that morning at 3:30. It's pitch dark outside, and I'm so excited. It feels like Christmas morning, and at the same time, there's definitely a bit of sadness there as well, because this thing that had really been percolating in my mind since 2006 was actually coming to a climax. We started out by crossing over the George Washington Bridge, which was pretty spectacular because it was still pitch dark, it was a little foggy, very surreal. So the bridge crosses and you're up in Uptown around 160th, and we had to run downtown to Fox 5 Good Day New York, who was going to be filming our arrival, and that was at 67th and 3rd. About 5 miles left, we meet up with Katie, my best friends from New York, Liz and Rachel and Mark, and Melissa, Mike's wife, and they join us, and we're just a flock of birds. It's just a ball. It's a total ball. It's total fun. We were clipping away. We're doing about 9-minute miles, and then we're about a block away. We're on 3rd Avenue by this point, and at that moment, about a quarter of a block away, Katie spots her 4 best friends from high school. And this was a surprise.
It was so hard to keep it a secret. There were many times where Katie would come up behind us and we'd be talking about it. We'd all of a sudden have to change subjects, and it was not easy.
Kathy designed the banner, and it was a really cute design. It said "From the Arch to the Apple" on it, and we just held it up at the finish line as Colleen and Katie were rounding the corner.
As we turned the corner, I grabbed Katie's hand, and we just run that last half a block together.
That was just one of those exhilarating moments. And they came running around holding hands, and they were all exuberant, and it was just wonderful. And then Katie had a wonderful surprise. 4 of her buddies from high school had flown out in secret.
It was so cool. Like, it was just, especially seeing Katie's face, because Katie just started bawling like immediately the second we saw her. So we all got pretty emotional, and then
It was just the coolest feeling. Like, every time I talk about it, I get chills.
Yeah.
It's just,
When Katie saw those 4 girls, she threw back her head and started bawling with such joy. It was magical.
It was just a huge project to undertake, and she did it amazingly. And I'm glad I was a part of it, even if it was just for a small bit.
Crossing the finish line was one of the most amazing days of my life. Just being there to finish the run with her and turning the corner and crossing the finish line, something I'll never forget. Just seeing all my family and my friends surprising me. It's just always a reminder of how much I'm loved.
When I first crossed the finish line, everything was kind of a whirl of emotions and thoughts, but I think the overriding feeling was, we did it. Like, we did it. And after a year and a half of sweat and tears and emotions and up and downs and obstacles, we actually did it, and it happened. And at that point in the journey, we had raised $40,000 profit for CF, and it just was a huge, overwhelming feeling of happiness.
Run for Roses was incredible and just really shows that anything is possible. Just means a dream that can come true.
you.